Hi students, it's Miss Gaska. Today we're going to talk about 8th grade, week 2, activity 4.8, Elements of Humor, Comic Situations. Our learning targets for this activity are to include investigate how humor is created by comic situations, analyze comic situations in a literary text collaboratively, and determine the impact of word choice on meaning and tone in a comic situation. So, comic situations can be created in many different ways. To begin with, they could be created by placing a character in an unlikely situation in which he or she obviously does not belong, by portraying characters as victims of circumstances who are surprised by unusual events and react in a comical way, and by creating situational irony where there is contrast between what characters or readers might reasonably expect to happen and what actually happens. So you're going to watch a film clip. I'm going to post the link to that on Canvas. And while you watch it, think about how the situation contributes to the humor. Then you're going to rewatch it and fill out this chart below. So here you're going to put the name of the clip. Here you're going to list the director. The comic character, if you know the name, you would put his name or her name here. And then go down to this section. So the comic character, you would list their appearance, their facial expressions here, their actions here, and their words here. And the next column, you're going to describe the setting, so like the place, the time, things like that, and the humorous events that happen here. And then film techniques that help create humor. You're going to discuss the framing of the video here, the angles used here, and then the sound used here. And the sound can include background noises, songs, laugh tracks, whatever. So now we're going to preview the text that we're about to read. So in this activity, we're going to be reading an excerpt from a novel and thinking about the author's use of irony to create comic situations. So as you read the excerpt, we're going to be underlining words and phrases that explain what is happening in the plot. Sorry about that. So I'm going to go ahead and underline that so that we remember that underlines go with what's happening in the plot. Then we're going to be circling unknown words and phrases and trying to figure out what those words mean based on context clues, word parts, or a dictionary. And then we're also going to place a D by examples of dialect. Now, you may not know what dialect means, but that's okay because it's listed right over here. Dialect is a regional or social variety of a language distinguished by the pronunciation, grammar, or vocabulary. This section of the story includes a depiction of Tom's and Jim's dialects. An example of this is like a southern dialect where you use words like ain't and y'all. That would be considered dialect. They're not part of standard English, but they are a specific way that English is spoken depending on a region that dialect is from. So let's get started. This excerpt is from the novel The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain, and this excerpt is entitled A Day's Work. I'm going to read the first 2 paragraphs with you and demonstrate how I would do the annotations that we are supposed to be doing, and also I'm going to be explaining a little bit of what's going on. Then I'll have you do the rest of it, annotating and figuring out what's comedic, what's going along with what's contributing to the plot, things like that, the things that they asked for in previewing the text. And then you can meet me in the questions section and we'll go over those together. So chunk 1. Saturday morning was come, and all the morning world was bright and fresh and brimming with life. There was a song in every heart, and if the heart was young, the music issued at the lips. There was cheer in every face, and a spring in every step. The locust trees were in bloom, and the fragrance of the blossoms filled the air. Cardiff Hill, beyond the village and above it, was green with vegetation, and it lay just far enough away to seem a delectable land, dreamy, reposeful, and inviting. So I'm going to pause here. The first thing I'm going to do is look for vocabulary that I don't know. So I'm going to grab my circle tool, and I'm going to say, which of these words do I not really recognize? Well, the way they used issued here is kind of unusual. I'm going to guess that what they're talking about is that there's a song in their heart, and if the heart was young, so like if the person's a young person, then they'll probably sing the song that's in their heart. So music issued at the lips will probably mean like the lips are issuing music. And then it says, we already know what fragrance is. Vegetation, we know what vegetation is. And then delectable. I don't know if you guys know what delectable is, but that's another word you can figure out. And then also reposeful. So along with those things, we're also supposed to be looking for words and phrases that explain what is happening in the prompt. So here we're kind of getting a setting. There are kids, they're walking along, and everything is beautiful and pretty. But they're not really giving us any thing that is happening, any events. It's kind of just giving us a little bit of exposition to describe the setting. So I'm going to just jot that down on the side here. This paragraph builds the setting and sets the tone. Or, I'm sorry, the mood. So by mood, I'm talking about like the atmosphere. They're creating a cheerful mood. Everything is bright and sunny and happy. Everyone's having fun. Everything is great. It's a Saturday morning. The world is wonderful. So now let's look at chunk 2. Tom appeared on the sidewalk with a bucket of whitewash and a long-handled brush. He surveyed the fence, and all gladness left him, and a deep melancholy settled down upon his spirit. 30 yards of board fence 9 feet high. Life to him seemed hollow, and existence but a burden. Sighing, he dipped his brush and passed it along the topmost plank, repeated the operation, did it again, compared the insignificant whitewashed streak with the far-reaching continent of unwhitewashed fence, and sat down on a tree box discouraged. Jim came skipping out at the gate with a tin pail and singing Buffalo Gals. Bringing water from the town pump had always been hateful work in Tom's eyes before, but now it did not strike him so. He remembered that there was company at the pump. White, mulatto, and Negro boys and girls were always there waiting their turns, resting, trading playthings, quarreling, fighting, skylarking, and he remembered that although the pump was only 150 yards off, Jim never came back with a bucket of water under an hour, and even then somebody generally had to go after him. Tom said. So I'm going to stop here and annotate this paragraph with you too. So I'm going to first look for words and phrases that might be unfamiliar to me. So whitewash. You guys might not know what whitewashing is. That's something that you might want to investigate. And then there's melancholy. Life seemed hollow, existence but a burden. So he's having a hard time. And then I don't know if you guys know operation in this case, but it's basically like repeating the action. And then insignificant, you guys are probably familiar with that word. It means unimportant. And then the far-reaching continent of unwhitewashed fence. Here he's making a metaphor comparing how much fence is still not whitewashed to a huge continent on Earth. So that's a metaphor there. And then, I don't know what a tree box is. Maybe one of you guys do, but I definitely don't. And then he remembers company. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the word mulatto. It's basically a word that used to be used to describe people who were mixed with white and black. And then quarreling means fighting, or arguing, rather. And then you have skylarking, which honestly, I don't know what that means myself. So now I'm going to go and find like the different actions that are happening that are contributing to my plot. So he's looking at the fence and getting sad. He's got a bucket of whitewash, so that I know that he's getting ready to whitewash the fence, which is kind of like painting the fence. So he's dipping his brush and passing it along the plank. And then he's looking at how much still needs to be whitewashed, sitting down, discouraged, after only a few strokes. Then Jim comes skipping out of the gate with a tin pail. And now Tom is thinking about how there's company at the pump and people to talk with and play with and trade toys with and all kinds of stuff. So on the side here, I'm going to jot down a note about the events that are happening that are contributing to the plot. So I have Tom is getting ready to whitewash the fence and feels gloomy about it. He whitewashes a few panels, but then gets discouraged and sits down. Then Jim skips by with a tin pail, ready to go get water from the well. Tom reflects on how getting water used to be considered a horrible chore, but now it occurs to him that it's a good opportunity to socialize. So I hope you guys see how I derived that from that paragraph. So now it's up to you to annotate the rest of these paragraphs, and then meet me down below where we can go over the questions together. Alright, so number 3 down here says, what does the word reposeful mean in paragraph 1? What clues in the text help you understand the meaning of the word? For what I would do is I would go look up the word reposeful and then look at that paragraph and try to find context clues that tell me what that meaning is. So find the meaning first and then figure out how the text gives you the meaning after that. For number 4, it says, what does the word melancholy mean in paragraph 2? What clues in the text helped you understand the meaning of the word? So again, do the same thing. Look up melancholy first and then find evidence in the text that supports that definition of melancholy. For number 5, one of the notable characteristics of Twain's style is his use of verbals. So examine paragraph 2 and highlight all the verbals. You might want to refresh yourself on what verbals are so that you'll be able to find them. So definitely look for that. Go back in your notes, find verbals, and then search for them and highlight them in that paragraph 2. For number 6, it says, how does Tom try to get Jim to help him in chunk 3? Why does he fail? So you're going to be looking at chunk 3 and explaining, 1, how Tom tries to get Jim to help him, and the second thing you're going to be explaining is why it doesn't work. For number 7, how does Twain use steamboat jargon for effect in chunk 4? You may want to look up what the word jargon means. It's basically another word for slang. So how does he use slang related to steamboats to create more of an effect in chunk 4? And then number 8 says, Tom tries to manipulate his friends into doing whitewashing for him. How does he change his plan in chunk 5 after Jim refuses to help? So what does he do to manipulate his friends, and then how does his plan change in chunk 5? You're going to have to go to chunk 5 and examine it and figure out what's different from that part from what happened before that with the manipulation. On number 9, it says, what does the word alacrity mean in paragraph 44? Cite the text to support your response. Like before, I would look up the meaning first and then find words in that paragraph that justify that meaning. Number 10, what is the intended effect of listing Tom's treasures in such great detail in paragraph 44? What does the audience understand about the value of these things that is different from Tom's point of view? So some of the treasures he listed, you might want to go back and look at what they are and how does the audience feel about them compared to how Tom feels about them. Number 11 says, review the definition of dialect on page 297. Referencing the words and phrases you've already marked with the D, try to paraphrase a few lines of dialogue in the My Notes section over here. So here it wants you to paraphrase or prepare for a collaborative discussion. So instead of worrying about the collaborative discussion, just do what the bullet points say. 1 is review what you've already underlined as the plot and make changes as needed in order to paraphrase the plot. Place a question mark to any word or idea you would like to clarify, so discuss to remove confusion. And place a star next to any part of the text you would like to analyze, which means to share an inference, assumption, prediction based on the text. So then, it says to do this on a separate sheet of paper, but I'm going to have you do it right here on the box. It says Tom is like A, and you're supposed to be creating a simile, comparing Tom to something. It is ironic that, and then explain an example of irony from the story. The part of the story that stands out in my head is, it says draw a picture. You could just copy paste a picture from the internet that pops up into your head when you think of whatever part of the story. And this is a comedic situation because, and then you would explain why that part is funny. And then I wonder would be like a part of the story that you wonder about. Then it's saying, what is the level of comedy in this text? What is a universal truth or theme of this text? Write a thematic statement. Be sure to support your ideas with textual evidence. So level of comedy, they're talking about, is it low comedy or high comedy? For theme subjects, that means like the message of the story. What is the author trying to say? And then you're writing a theme statement to explain in a sentence what the theme of the story is and how you know that that's the theme. Now, for the writing to sources part, explain how Mark Twain uses comic characters and situations to convey a universal truth through humor. So you're looking for a universal truth in that story and explaining how he uses these situations and characters in order to show that truth. So you need to make sure to establish a controlling idea and support it with textual evidence and commentary. Use transitions to create cohesion and clarify the relationship among ideas and concepts. Use precise diction and maintain a formal style. And use verbals. Last but not least, you're going to be adding your notes about comic situations to the Elements of Humor graphic organizer in Activity 4.11. So that concludes our Activity 4.8. I hope that this was helpful for you, and if you have any questions that remain, feel free to reach out to me and I'd be glad to assist you with that. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.